The agents find themselves in the middle of a soap opera as they investigate a tall tale of the chupacabra.
A manhunt ensues as they chase down an illegal immigrant who is spreading a dangerous fungus.
This is not happening.
Mulder, this happened how long ago?
3 días. Muy increíble, no?
Only the smell. Mulder, you brought me out here under the pretense of investigating an unexplained death. Can you tell me why we're standing out here in the middle of a field looking at a dead goat?
Well, according to eyewitnesses, the death we're investigating was preceded by a 14 event. That's a highly unusual or infrequent meteorological phenomenon, also known as a transient.
A transient?
Yeah. Witnesses described a bright flash about 30 degrees off the horizon. Then a hot yellow rain fell from a cloudless sky. Fortean researchers call these liquid falls. Black and red rains are the most common, but there have also been reported cases of blue, purple, and green rains.
Purple rain?
Yeah, great album. Deeply flawed movie, though.
Mulder, this transient, as you call it, this bright flash in the sky, I assume you think it has some connection to...
14 events have been linked to alien encounters. Cattle mutilations, the kind of exsanguinated animal carcass you were just looking at.
And the victim, Maria Durantes, does she die in a similar fashion?
I would assume so.
You assume? Nobody's examined the body?
Nobody cares, Scully. The victim and many of the witnesses are illegal immigrants, migrant farm workers. I thought it might be important to talk to them before they migrated.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Welcome back to This Is Not Happening, another X-Files podcast with me, Andrew, and as always, my good friend, Mike. Mike, I recognize you from the time I saw you in Indianapolis.
Indianapolis.
In the flesh for the very first time. Canada meets the U.S. in Indiana.
Yeah.
How exciting was that?
That was a good time, man.
That was a pretty great
good
time.
Weekend. Yeah.
I would do that again.
Learned a lot about board games and which one I'm not going to buy.
Oh, yeah, that was a great session, which we will not name to protect the innocent.
We will not name. No. That was a good time. I was happy to finally meet you in the flesh and hang out with you and Josh.
And lovely to meet your wife in the flesh as well. We had a great time. All of us, that is, not just you and
yes.
Me and your wife. That would be weird.
I mean,
or not.
I didn't think I left you alone. Maybe I did, but
you went to the bathroom for about 2 minutes.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah,
a lot can happen.
Well, that sounds like a soap opera in the making, right there.
That is a soap opera in the making.
It's almost like I am trying to link what happened in real life to the actual podcast that people came here to listen to and not just us natter on about our amazing social lives.
No es bueno.
Yes, very good.
No es bueno.
Tonight we are going to talk about episode 11 of season 4, known as El Mundo Gira, which translated from the Spanish means the world rotates, which obviously is a take on As the World Turns.
Yes.
What a marvelous episode this was, or could have been. We'll see at the end how we all felt about it. Gotta love the Ruben Blades. Ruben Blades was in this one.
Yeah.
I just have to call that out way out in advance. Soon to be movie star as far as 1997 is concerned. 22.37 million people watched this.
Yeah.
I mean, they're right
flying high from Terma.
They're wondering if it's going to get better.
Everyone wondering if, man, how many trips can they make in ridiculous amounts of time? Then they came across this.
None of that happens in this episode. I'm delighted to report. There are no travel shenanigans. Maybe because John Chabon is the writer here, and he doesn't seem to rip from those pages. You know, he's a little bit more down to earth, I would say, in the writing staff. And directed by Tucker Gates, of whom I know nothing. I'm assuming this is a one-trick pony for him.
Might be. I don't recall offhand the name.
Yeah, I think he's a contractor, is my brief research there. But started off in January 97, which means they were, of course, filming it in wintertime, probably November, December in BC, which is tricky, even for BC, which doesn't get a ton of snow, but they get snow. There are some opportunities for snow in the sun-baked San Joaquin Valley. So in this case, the crew literally had to move ahead from location to location to melt the snow before they set up each time. The magic of filmmaking before our eyes.
I also want to point out, even though he's not a recurring actor, we have Raymond Cruz as Eladio Buento. Buente. Excuse me.
Yeah.
You will see him in such movies as Training Day. You will see him in The Rock, Alien Resurrection. He plays substantial roles in both. Or not substantial, but
he's got screen time.
More than just background.
He's getting residuals for those, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, are we ready to talk about El Mundo Gira?
I think so.
Okay. Mike, we open in a candlelit meeting set in shadow. Spanish guitar is our musical wallpaper to accompany the dozens of people lurking in the dark of this shantytown house. A lone woman's voice calls out for people to be quiet. A middle-aged woman, Flaquita, emerges from the shadows and tells the others that she will tell the story, that people won't believe it, but she saw it with her own eyes. We crossfade to the workers' camp in the San Joaquin Valley, an older truck driving down the muddy street. A portly white man in the bed inviting the migrant workers for a day's labor. The camp is a shantytown made of sheet metal and poor lumber. As the workers assemble, a man, Soledad, kisses his girlfriend Maria goodbye and gets into the truck. Another man, Soledad's brother Eladio, approaches Maria and flirts. Both Flaquita and Soledad see Eladio's flirting, but we hear Maria remaining positively faithful to Soledad, who watches with jealousy as the truck drives away. Flaquita calls over to Maria to interrupt them. The goats are getting away. Maria chases after the goats, chased by Eladio, and Flaquita comments that 2 men and 1 girl, that means trouble. Well, the story is going to take a dramatic shift away from the boy meets girl meets boy story, and a moment later, there is an explosion in the sky and a sudden cloudburst of torrential rain. But the rain is strange. It's yellow, and it's quickly over, as suddenly as it began. Flaquita rushes over to find Maria, who lies dead on the ground. Beyond, in the meadow, alongside a dead goat, Maria's mouth and eyes have been burned away. Credits. Mike?
Good Lord.
How did this scene grab you?
It's interesting. Upon first watching it as a young lad,
I wasn't quite days in 1997.
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure where this was going. Obviously, once the lightning and the face being melted away, kind of, it became an X-Files episode at that point. So I could sense from the music that it was not going to be your typical episode. And I'm not saying that because of the Spanish guitar or anything, but there's a little bit of a different mood with it. And when you've got 2 men going after 1 girl in the beginning, it's like, okay, this feels like it's going to be not your typical X-Files episode. So this one, it was interesting once the deaths happened, but I was like, okay, what are we doing here?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're obviously introducing us to the characters, setting the stage.
Yes.
John Chabon has some things he wants to say about immigration. He does a fairly decent job. He's gonna. This isn't it. He's obviously painting a picture that life is not great in these camps.
Right.
So we're getting that backstory told in pictures. We are learning about the characters that are going to be button heads, and of course the tragedy which befalls immediately through this crazy supernatural incident. So yeah, that is the clear X-Files tie-in, and we know that the next scene is going to be the crime scene investigation by the agents. And what will happen? I mean, obviously, the drop-in is so easy. Post-credits, Mulder and Scully are investigating the scene of Maria's death. Scully is holding her nose over the dead body of a rotting goat. Scully explains that they're here investigating an unexplained death, and Mulder elaborates. The explosion, the yellow rain. Mulder describes it as a Fortean event, which has resulted in all sorts of strange things. Rain of different colors. Maria's strange death has not been explained because no one cares. These people are illegal immigrants. Oh. The duo head into the workers' village, but one look at Mulder's suit and tie has a woman screaming "La migra," and people run away despite Mulder's protestations. Eventually, Flaquita comes out and asks them what they want. Mulder asks about Maria Durante. Flaquita explains that it was the chupacabra, which Mulder describes as a Mexican folktale. She didn't see it, but everybody knows it's the truth, at which point Soledad steps up and points the finger at his brother, who killed Maria because she loved Soledad and only him. He can't explain the explosion in the rain, but he says it's a trick. Scully and Mulder walk away to figure it all out. Scully pegs it for what it is, a Mexican soap opera about two men and women. But Mulder wants to figure it all out. Scully's going to go look at the body, while Mulder looks out for Eladio.
This is quite the bricklaying foundation. This is so complex already. We've got love triangles, we've got dead people, we've got dead goats, we've got a supernatural story, a legend of the chupacabra, and the issue of immigration, at least cursory right in this moment. But
they're starting in on the issue of immigration. It's a slow start.
Yes. They're just packing it in right here. So very interesting start so far. I do want to comment on how obvious this location is to be California. Looks just like it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think the only thing that's missing is the yellow filter that gets used for any scene which deals with Mexico or Mexican immigrants.
Right.
To the show's credit, they didn't try and turn it into, full Mexico or Mexico adjacent.
Right.
They let it be what it is. They paint with the show's palette. So good on them for that. Or frankly, maybe they just didn't have the budget for a filter. But I think it's pretty solid so far. I haven't fallen off the truck yet to keep with the episode's theme.
I was just noting the compactness, the layering upon layering that they're doing already. So there's going to be a lot to cover in this episode.
So Mulder goes to visit Agent Lozano, Ruben Blades, to ask about Eladio Buente. Lozano is surprised that Mulder is here to investigate the death of Maria Durante. Lozano goes through his files and reveals some aliases of migrants that they have detained. No one uses their real name, so this is not going to go anywhere. Lozano doesn't buy the Chupacabra story, more Mexican folktales that explain circumstances because these folks can't go to the law to resolve their differences. But Mulder's the most interesting thing to walk into his doorway all day, so he's going to agree to help Mulder find Eladio. Meanwhile, Scully heads to the Fresno County morgue to look at Maria Durante's body. The coroner cannot be more disinterested in helping Scully. She's got her own work to do, it seems. But she does relent to help her look at Maria's body. Unzipping the body bag, we see that Maria's body is completely covered in fungus and webs in an advanced state of decay. Both Scully and the coroner recoil in horror. Okay, I want to talk about the makeup at play here because this scene is awesome.
It's good stuff.
It's amazing. I think they really captured this earthy element. Like, I don't look at that and go, oh, that's fungus. I look at that as this is something that went bad in the fridge.
Right.
Yeah, covered with a leafy moss-like look, but also kind of spider webs. Like, it really does have, I don't know. I think there's a lot of work done by the staff to figure out, all right, if somebody was going to putrefy with fungus in a body bag, what would that look like? And it just, I'm no expert, but it looks to me like, oh yeah, spot on.
It's a really good job, especially the eating away at the lips. I like the teeth kind of coming through. It reminds me of Darkness Falls when they open the cocoon.
Yes.
That good fabric tearing sound.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really disgusting. But yeah, this is excellent makeup.
I think that the one thing they don't have in this whole episode is a convincing explanation for how Maria's lips get removed, like where the burning comes from. And I think that sort of transfers to other characters too. Like the implication is that the chupacabra is doing the eating of the flesh, but
right
doesn't really.
Once the episode ends, it does not really jive with the story.
Yeah, it's a little bit strange, but
it's clearly for effect.
Definitely for effect, and it's very compelling at this stage in the episode. So shut up, Andrew. Let's move on. We cut to the INS holding cell with Lozano saying, "This must be him." The other detainees don't want to go near him. They think he's El Chupacabra. But Lozano can confirm that he's not Eric Estrada, which is Eladio's name as listed on his file.
That's good.
It's a good joke, John Chabon. Thank you for coming back to that. Lozano, so it's worth noting that John Chabon apparently spent like 2 weeks in an INS holding facility to get a sense of what it's like there. And the one thing he took away was that nobody uses their real name. So it's clearly being penned back into the episode. So Lozano translates as Mulder asks Eladio some questions. Eladio shouts his innocence in full Mexican soap opera manner. He is verklempt with emotion, but he explains what happened. The explosion, the hot rain. When he opened his eyes, he saw the dead goat and Maria. She called his name. Something ate at her face. He held her in his arms, and then she died. Then he got up and ran, screaming. It is a compelling performance, and Lozano agrees that Eladio is a lot better than Eric Estrada. Quality scene.
This episode does have good stuff in it.
It does. I think it should get a higher mark than it will probably end up getting, but anyway, continue.
Probably.
Later, Eladio is transferred, being put on a bus to the obvious commotion of the other detained migrant passengers. Mulder wants to delay his extradition, but Lozano cannot understand why. File your paperwork. By the time it's processed, he'll probably be back here anyway. Eladio is finally transferred to the front of the bus as Scully drives up.
Did you find Eladio Buente?
Yeah, I found him.
Did he confess to the murder of Maria Durantes?
Not exactly, no.
Did he tell you what happened?
Flash of light, yellow rain. Maria! Maria!
He didn't kill her, Mulder. I examined the body of Maria Durantes, and I believe that her cause of death was natural, albeit strange. She seems to have succumbed to a massive fungal infection.
A fungus?
Aspergillus, according to the coroner. It's a mold that's found in dead leaves, compost, even household dust.
And it can kill?
Not normally. It's actually very common and quite harmless.
You don't think that's weird?
Well, aspergillus can be lethal to people with immunodeficiencies like AIDS patients and transplant recipients. I found high levels of methyl bromide in her blood workup. It's a pesticide that's used for soil sterilization, highly toxic. Now, I think that her body was so ravaged by pesticides that a normally benign fungus may have compromised her whole immune system.
Still doesn't explain the flash of light and the yellow rain. And El Chupacabra.
Mulder, I know you don't want to hear this, but I think the aliens in this story are not the villains, they're the victims.
As they round the corner, they see the INS bus has pulled off the road, and migrants are fleeing from it. The agents go to investigate, seeing the migrants disappearing in the countryside. They peer into the cab to see that the bus driver has succumbed to what appears to be the same fungal infection as Maria. We fade to commercial, likely for an athlete's foot cream.
Tough actin' and actin'. With John Madden.
Do you have athlete's foot? Put it in its place.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
The pieces are coming together, Andrew. This is a fungal infection.
You know what's missing in this episode was the little plot nugget of the pesticide in Maria's blood, the high levels of methyl bromide.
Mm-hmm.
It's a red herring.
Yeah.
It never comes up again.
No.
But what it was suggesting to me was, okay, maybe there's a corporate thing here, like they drink from water that's run off from a plant which uses methyl bromide. They poor environmental controls, and they're going to suffer because of it. But it never comes up.
No, there's really no real satisfying explanation for this, but we will get one, Andrew.
Well, we sure will.
Get one.
So after the commercial, Scully, wearing a mask, takes a sample from the driver as local law enforcement has cordoned off the area, their red and blue lights illuminating the scene. Agent Lozano shows up wearing a great cowboy hat. They couldn't find Eladio. And Scully sticks to her guns that Eladio did not kill the driver, that it's the work of some highly virulent pathogen. In that great X-Files way of theirs, they come up with a plan. Scully is going to isolate the pathogen, while Lozano and Mulder continue the manhunt for El Chupacabra, Eladio Buente. It's at this point.
Manhunt.
It's a manhunt. We're finally getting there. And we are going to cut to a television showing us a Mexican soap opera playing a show called El Cuento dos Hermanos, The Tale of Two Sisters, which, Mike, is a completely fictional teleplay created specifically for this episode. Can you imagine,
That's
like,
awesome.
you don't, I mean, it's probably just one scene that they had to do here, but You
Right.
could get so carried away in like writing up the scene for this mythical soap opera so that it can be camera business for your scene. You know, you're not even going to use it.
It reminds me of an old Psych episode. I don't know if you ever watched that, but
I watched Psych, yeah.
there's an episode where James Roday has to pretend he's in a Mexican soap opera. It's pretty good. But to make it up for the context of an episode, it would be a fun time. Just coming up with a soap opera story in general.
Yeah, exactly.
It's got to be fun and ridiculous.
A missed opportunity not to come back to the show multiple times. Although I think they're walking a line here. Like they could have so easily made this a really funny episode, but they're not going to do that in this one. There's some hints at it. There's a few Mulder one-liners.
Yeah, they have their jokes, but it's not overly offensive or rambunctious. I guess.
It's pretty straight-laced. So they want to be scary. They want to be tense.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to give it to them. We are in a barber shop. Camera tracking back to show Eladio sneaking into the place. The barber is reading a paper on one of the chairs. Eladio comes over and begs the barber to take him back to Mexico. The barber is initially resistant, but decides he'll do it if Eladio comes back at dusk with some money. As the lovers embrace on the soap opera, Eladio leaves. We cut back to the migrant camp. As an El Camino pulls up to the line of eager migrant workers, Eladio looks on, awaiting an opportunity. As the El Camino pulls away, another truck pulls up, the driver looking for 2 workers, just 2. He selects them, goes back to stow them inside, but finds Eladio is already in there. On seeing Eladio, hushed murmurs of El Chupacabra are heard as the workers walk away. Driver shrugs and allows that Eladio will have to do, closing him back up inside the bed of the truck. So, and at this point, Eladio's got the shakes. It doesn't look altogether well.
He is desperate. He refuses to get out of the truck, and he is showing signs of not feeling well. And honestly, I think everyone somehow knows the story of Eladio Fuentes at this point.
It's gotten around.
So they all retreat. They all retreat. No questions asked. Get away from the sick man.
Yeah, exactly.
Get away from El Chupacabra.
Scully is now looking at samples under a microscope, discussing the fungi she's found with the mycologist at this place, a guy named Steen, although he's never referred to. That's just what the transcript calls him. There's a lot of back and forth about the science of it, but all you need to know is that Steen has distilled an enzyme from Scully's sample, a catalyst which has accelerated the growth of this fungus. He drips a few drops of the enzyme onto another fungal sample, and it bubbles creepily over the side at an impossibly fast rate, making Scully's jaw drop. And that is probably the most basic, home volcano science at play there. But it plays so well.
It's effective. It is effective.
Yeah.
And this Dr. Steen is Robert Thurston. And we saw him in Irresistible.
We cut to a wall with the spray-painted image of an alien gray and the words El Chupacabra Vive. Lozana speaks with migrant workers, revealing that Eladio went off with a man named Culver. Lozana and Mulder discuss Eladio's future. The migrants think he's definitely El Chupacabra, and Lozano thinks that Soledad will find Eladio before they will. Mulder's not deterred, though. And next we see Eladio is working at a new house. So the inner framing has been done up, and he looks like he's throwing construction waste away. He's clearly been working hard. He's sweating. He dries the sweat off. It's yellow. He calls for Culver. He doesn't find him. Eladio calls out for Culver. Doesn't find him. He goes to have a drink from a water jug. A voice calls out his name. It's Soledad, who picks up a pipe and goes looking for his brother, vengeance in his heart. As he passes by the water jug, we see that fungus has begun. As he passes by the water jug, we see that fungus has begun to grow from the spout. Ominous foreshadowing.
Disgusting.
Yeah, and gross too.
I wanted to ask your opinion.
Go for
it. And we don't have to get too far into it. We can.
We're going into the weeds.
How do you feel about the rapidity of how this attacks people and things? So and you can hang on to that if you'd like.
No, I'll address it now because I think it is one of my pet peeves of the episode is that it's pretty damn fast. I think they do prime us for it with the visual example of Scully and Steen, the mycologist, where he drops the enzyme, drops into the fungus, and it goes blah, 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 all over the place. So that's telling us that this stuff works fast. So I'm kind of on board with that. I mean, we'll come to an obvious scene where I feel like, okay, now you're going a bit too far, but I think they could have let it go a bit faster because, I don't know. I think that Eladio is clueless as to what's happening. It certainly presents him as being clueless to his own condition. And if he killed people that rapidly, like, I mean, he'd be going off the deep end, surely. Like, they carefully gloss over that. How do you feel about it?
I have mixed feelings about it because I think it's a little too fast.
Mm.
And I understand there has to be a story and there has to be victims. There have to be victims, but part of me thinks this just moves way too quick.
Yeah, and I think we should circle back to it. But I also am not completely on board. The only thing I'll say is they got a lot of episode to get through in 42 minutes. So in a way, stuff does have to happen fast.
Yeah.
And they try and justify it with the whole Scully fungus experiment. So at least they're not just sort of doing it and hoping we don't notice, which is something I do get bothered by occasionally. So well, let's move on. We're still in the Eladio Soledad confrontation. The fungus has grown from the spout of the water jug. Soledad walks around searching until he finds the last possible hiding place that Eladio could be, the porta potty. Calls out for Eladio to show himself so he can spit in his face. Then he opens the door, which Culver curiously didn't lock. Okay.
He's just asking for a pantsing.
He likes it when his staff opens up the door and, he can give him a little surprise, That's not the case here, though. We see Culver in a state of advanced fungal decomposition, similar to Maria, and this completely freaks out Soledad. That's not Eladio. A truck starts, and Eladio escapes, barely missing Soledad as he drives past him. Soledad curses him as he goes. Having completely forgot about the strange death of Culver. That's kind of odd, but, when you're obsessed with vengeance, you really don't have time to be bothered with shit like that.
Just bypass it. This is just in my way. I need to kill my brother.
Yeah, I got priorities here. Well, we cut to a delightful house in the country, Meadowview Estates in Upper Fresno County. We see a maid polishing silverware through the bay window. This is Gabrielle, Eladio's cousin. And Gabrielle's name is called by Eladio as he runs to the house. She meets him at the porch door, where he tells her he's returning to Mexico and that she should come with him for no great reason. He professes his innocence, but Gabrielle's not buying it. She's heard that he's the Chupacabra, having killed Maria and many more. He needs her help. He needs money, but she can't help him. She only gets paid tonight. So he hops the fence and runs away. So, introducing Gabrielle as a character. I'm sure that'll be pertinent and important later.
Oh, yeah.
Scully is back in the lab. She calls Mulder. She's come around thinking that Eladio is in fact the cause of the deaths, but that he's more of a Typhoid Mary type carrier for this fungal infection. She underlines that it's important if no one touches Eladio. We are treated to another site of the fungal culver in the porta potty. And since this is the X-Files, we have to get another kick of the can for extraterrestrials. Mulder breaks down a theory that the Fortean event was an object falling to the Earth at a high rate of speed, creating a sonic boom and a flash of light called a bolide. A meteorite or piece of extraplanetary material. And apparently, Mike, 2,000 tons of this stuff fall to Earth every day.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. I mean, probably landing a lot of it in the ocean because, or inhospitable places. The actual percentage of the planet which is covered by humans is relatively small.
I don't know how accurate this is. How accurate do you think this statement is?
I feel like there's a liberty at play here, but also
a little bit.
I could be completely convinced
I can believe
that this is the
but
truth.
At the same time, it's I don't know, Mulder. Sounds like a lot.
I feel like this would be a bigger thing if that was the case, but anyway, if it's true, that's a hell of a fact. Well, Scully correctly calls it as totally beside the point. They need to find Eladio, and fast. Lozano nicely links up that the Mexicans may have their stories, but so does Agent Mulder. See what he did there? We end our scene with the barber showing up to play both sides, telling them that he'll give up Eladio's location for a modest fee.
What do you think that fee is?
He would like tickets to a baseball game that Lozano's son plays in. It's a hot ticket.
I want behind the dugout. Home game.
I want behind home plate. Damn straight. I want to talk to those kids and tell them what for. Well, we cut later to the truck stop. Dusk approaching. Lozano and Mulder trail Eladio, who is coughing and generally not looking too healthy. Mulder and Lozano close in, and then for no great reason whatsoever, Mulder completely blows it, calling out to Eladio well before he gets close, causing Eladio to run for it. It does result in a great foot chase. You got a shaky camera. They're weaving in between trucks. Fellow migrants emerge from a box truck and run in all directions. It's all helter-skelter chaos. It's pretty great. Until finally Mulder is almost onto Eladio when they are separated by a truck. Eladio actually tumbles between the wheels of the moving truck, something Mulder's not prepared to do, and he escapes from view. It's a pretty great stunt, I gotta say.
It's good stuff. A little dangerous, but
just a little
the
bit
desperate nature of Eladio. And then he does the impossible.
Yeah.
He appears 2 or 3 trucks behind where he was.
Yeah.
In a truck full of goats.
We don't see the line of trucks that are, all leaving at the same time. And it actually wound around to Eladio's place. That's clearly the only way that works. I just got to underline that stunt because they would have had to do that multiple times. Because the way that's shot, he tumbles on the left side of the truck between those wheels. And then it cuts and he tumbles out the other side. So that's not one take and you were lucky. You got to do this a couple of times.
Right. I'm sure they had to practice that one because they want to kill their actors.
Well, as stunt actors, they
obviously, yeah.
It's probably not the guy playing Eladio, but it is.
He earned his paycheck this week.
Yeah, he knew if he's going to work for the X-Files, they were going to ask him a few things.
Just like the other guest stars, where they have to put them through the scariest shit they can think of.
Yeah.
He had to roll underneath a moving truck. I do contest what you said. I do contest that he rolls under the truck, Mulder loses him, and then he appears 2 trucks down in the bed with the goats. If you watch that again, he is... Yeah. It's just rather quick. I'm like, how the hell did he get out there?
It's not a convincing cut to my mind.
No.
You are absolutely right. I think the implication is that the truck was on the other side and he was able to get onto it, except that you see the overhead view of the direction of the truck, and it's curving from Mulder's side. So it doesn't really ring true, but you know what? This guy is squirrely and able to do it, so shut up and move on. I don't know why you don't like this show.
I'm learning from the best, Andrew.
Oh. So Eladio is in the truck filled with goats as we cut to a commercial. And when we cut back, it is night. The truck is opened up on Highway 99, and it's filled with smelly, dead goats.
Stuffed animals.
Yeah. No goats were harmed in the filming of this episode, I'm sure. Mulder laments that Eladio keeps eluding them, which allows John Chabon to tell us what he's learned about migrants in Los Angeles. They are functionally invisible. Most people just use them as cheap labor. They are aliens, says Lozano, in the truest sense of the word. Well, thank you, John, for telling us how it is. In 1997, actually, you probably would have needed that kind of messaging. I don't think that was quite common yet.
That's true.
A police car pulls up, and Flaquita steps out, looking at the dead goats. She's horrified. She tells her story, relating that Eladio went to Gabrielle's house for money, and that later Soledad went to Gabrielle's house looking for Eladio. So that's where we're off to next. Gabrielle's apartment, where Lozano knocks on her door. She answers. Lozano storms in with Mulder and Scully. Gabrielle cries, while Lozano looks around. She's afraid because of what they're saying about Eladio. Well, Lozano returns, announcing that no one's here, and for no great reason, he announces he's going to be watching every move Gabrielle makes. Not sure why he's quite such an asshole in that state, but he is.
He gets a little rough with her, and I think it's just because he knows that she knows. Like, she's not stupid. He knows that they're friends, and he has a suspicion that Eladio has reached out to her.
Okay, I'll buy that.
Not
I
saying
think
it's okay.
No, well, that's fair. I mean, Ruben Blades just acting a role. He's not like that in real life. Bro, I don't know. I think maybe he is. Maybe this is just the actor coming through, and the character is actually supposed to be more sympathetic. I don't know anything anymore.
And now, the next scene is how we all felt during COVID. When we go out in public and you cough.
Yeah.
This is what you felt like.
Well, before we go, we need Mulder to say that they need to stay around for a little bit. Something is happening here, he says. He's as suspicious as Lozano is. He thinks that if they just wait, maybe they'll be rewarded, and he's not going to be wrong. Well, we cut to a very sick Eladio entering a supermarket. This is, in fact, Gabrielle's night job. So Eladio has lesions on his face. People give him a wide berth, and he finds a bulk bin of nuts. He starts eating them with his hands, and an extra masquerading as an actor walks by and store clothes, telling him to stop. Frightened, Eladio scurries away. Yeah, you liked that, didn't you? You liked my little description of that guy.
That was good, because he sucks.
Hey, you can't do that.
Hey, Jose.
Hey, Jose.
Well, that's okay. He gets got for the slightly racist attack on
the
Eladio.
Casual racism gets him killed, clearly. Okay, so frightened, Eladio scurries away, pulling over the whole display of bulk foods as he goes and makes a ton of work for this store guy, whose name tag says C. Delwood. I don't know if there's any reference there for you to make, but maybe that's the actor's actual name. Who knows? Who cares? Just so you know, this corpse-to-be had a name, Mike. He was a character with a full backstory. Yeah, his name is... I can't say the word on radio, but that's what the C word stands. Yeah.
Cunt? What are you so afraid of, Andrew?
I'm afraid of being called out as a bad person. That's what it is.
No one's going to call you a bad person.
Just you, I suppose. Don't do that to me, man. So he flees. He makes a ton of work for this guy. And we see that the cashews he was eating have grown a strange green fuzz on them, which is probably in no way safe to touch. But touch it, the shop clerk does. Too bad, Delwood, you're going to die.
Sorry, dude.
Sorry, Jose. Later, outside Gabrielle's apartment, the lights turn out and Soledad emerges, getting into his car and tearing off. Lozano and our heroes follow in Lozano's truck. Gabrielle makes a call and a payphone rings. Eladio picks it up on the other end. He has been expecting her at her night job, but she didn't show. He reveals that Soledad is on his way, that she could only stall him for so long, but Eladio is already gone, the phone hanging on its cord. As Soledad cruises to a stop. Mike, did you ever use a public payphone? Was that ever a thing?
I did.
You did?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a time?
Absolutely. I'm 40 years old in a couple months here.
Wow, you have lived a life. I think there are probably kids of a certain generation who would look at this and go, that's a phone?
A phone on the street?
On the street with a cord? That's so strange. You put money in it to make it go? We don't see that part. But.
Yeah, they would actually, you would have to put a quarter in or more.
Or more at the end, like 50 cents a dollar.
You would have to make a call. And if it went longer, it would either disconnect you or, and this is
voice
amazing,
would come on. Yep.
They would call you back after you hung up and ask for more money.
That is very old school. I mean, if you ever made a collect call, you literally had to feed money in the machine, and the operator could hear it going in and know how much you'd put in and know whether or not they would connect you or not. Very old school technology. All right, are we good to move on? Do we want to talk more about the payphones of the past?
No. I think the children are all satisfied.
Everybody is satisfied for sure. So Soledad, that's their couple name. Solidario.
Solidario. That's what they were in the womb.
Yeah,
but they're not twins.
They are certainly. They don't even look related. I don't buy them as being brothers. I buy them as being brothers by a different mother, but. Okay. Never specified. The other one gets out. Soledad gets out. He's on the hunt for Eladio. He enters the supermarket. Quickly, the agents are upon him, and everybody is pointing guns at each other. In a nice departure from typical American justice, it does not end in gunfire. Soledad breaks down, classic Mexican soap opera fashion, saying he only wanted justice, the justice of a brother against a brother. He drops his gun. Lozano goes and cuffs him. Scully looks over and sees that the shop clerk has died, quite calmly and peacefully, holding a broom in his pile of green fungal goo. He's been here.
That spread.
Yeah.
That spread.
Wow.
That is all over the store.
This is where I did a little eye roll. And, this is where the rating goes down a bit for me on this episode. Because when Soledad walks in, he passes by, the lovely lady who's at the cash. And she's just having a day. She's just like,
she has no idea this has happened.
No, there's nothing wrong back there in aisle 12. And I just feel like, you don't think that or whatever his name is going to make a little noisy as he goes down, or call 911?
See, Delwood's been pretty quiet. Oh, well.
I guess he's taking his break. But then just like, there's no smell. There's no, like, when somebody dies, usually their bowels evacuate. So I just feel like there's no way that there's this casual red herring of, there's the shop guy's dead body in a massive pool of green fungus.
You know what, Andrew? She was hired to be a cashier, and that is what she's going to do. She's not paid to give a shit about the rest of the store.
She does not leave the desk. That is her job. Okay.
She's good at it.
All right. I will move on from my one-liner in uppercase that says, "How does no one see or notice this?" Eladio wanders down a dark hallway, the lights flickering. This is Gabrielle's apartment building. He knocks pitifully on her door and she answers, letting his silhouetted form into her unit. But quickly, she recoils in horror upon seeing his face. What's wrong? What's happened to him? He's become what they say he is, El Chupacabra. Indeed, Eladio's face is a greenish yellow, mottled, filled with lesions. He screams in horror as we fade to black.
It's a good scream. I'll give him that.
He acts his little heart out in this one, and I'd like to reflect again on the remarkable makeup work that's being done here.
Oh, yeah.
They're
doing a good job. And they are giving him an interesting look. It's an interesting design for this monster of the week. And, he's getting a sort of bulbous head and some green, ugly face. It's interesting.
So at this point, my mind started to wander a bit on the possible nature of this character and what is affecting him. And started the episode with the kind of extraterrestrial, something came out of space and landed and it changed, it created a horrific thing. And now he's changing. So I thought, could this be alien DNA that's gotten into him and it's changing him? It's reprogramming his DNA. And now he's, he's a walking killer, because he's got alien goo coming out of him. But did you have any feelings on about that at this point, or is that just me?
I think as an explanation for what's happening, they allude to the rock from space, and there's some enzyme that was on it, some alien enzyme. I don't know if it's supposed to be anything other than just a highly dangerous fungus. Yeah. I feel like it's almost turning him into fungus himself. That's kind of where my mind went with it. Almost like I don't know if you've seen The Last of Us. There are some creatures in there that are very plant-like or fungus-like. And this kind of reminds me of that now. Okay. So I'm thinking of his head becoming misshapen, a little less like alien and more like he is becoming the fungus that he's spreading, which is why he's not dying from it. He's just becoming the carrier, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, well, we'll get to the official explanation at the end of the episode, but it was really where your mind was going around this point, trying to put pieces together, and that's at least where mine was going. I was trying to connect what they had given us, and I'm not convinced they gave us enough to really go on, but anyway, it's still interesting. Really. I'm still engaged. Yes. The very quick death of poor C. Delwood that is really, it nudges me out of the plot. It's the tragedy of this episode. It really is. He doesn't get his due. Well, we come back from the commercial. Mulder crashes through the door of Gabrielle's apartment, but Eladio, he's not there. Gabrielle relates that Eladio intends to go back to Mexico out of fear, and she has given him all of her money.
Lozano shrugs and suggests that that's the last they'll ever see of Eladio and goes off to process Soledad. Back in their car, Mulder and Scully reflect on what's next. Scully is alarmed that if Eladio were to go into a metropolitan area in his condition, he could infect a lot of people. But Mulder thinks he's not going to do that. He's not going to go back to Mexico either. He's going to go face his brother. Because, Mike, this is a Mexican soap opera, and we need to have a showdown.
Absolutely.
Mulder tells Scully to get a hazmat team assembled, because that's woman's work.
Well, I didn't go there.
We
It's
cut
harsh,
back to...
Andrew.
It's harsh, it is, but it's the truth. So we cut back to the migrant camp where Flaquita awaits. Lozano has arrived with Soledad. Lozano screams for Eladio to show himself, to face his brother. Eladio tears off, and we get a fleeting glance of Eladio's head, now completely transformed into something that very much resembles a fungus. Figures run off. In the distance, we hear a gunshot. Flaquita arrives to see the dead body of Agent Lozano, rest in peace Ruben Blades, who is already showing signs of green fungus on his face. Flaquita looks up to see a bright light over the hill, and from a mysterious mist emerges 4 alien figures marching towards her. She flees. We hear her relating the remainder of her story to an unseen audience. Actually, it's the same audience from the beginning of the episode, if you think back. The figures had come to retrieve Eladio. What happened to Soledad? Flaquita says he was turned into a chupacabra, made to suck the blood of the sick and dying goats. Now, at this point, a village girl challenges her on this, saying Gabriel lied so that Eladio might live, but Lozano knew that Soledad couldn't live with vengeance in his heart. And now, we see Gabriel's version of this story. Eladio runs, and we see Lozano fire a warning shot in the air. Eladio stops to face them. Soledad takes Lozano's gun when Eladio turns to face them. Now, fully the chupacabra, the men are shocked, but Soledad just can't shoot his brother. We see Gabriel has picked up the tale now, telling it to the men of the migrant worker camp, who stand rapt with attention, probing for detail. Lozano calls him a coward. They've got to kill Eladio, and the two of them struggle with the gun. It goes off, killing Lozano. And we end the scene with Gabriel saying that Eladio transformed Soledad into a chupacabra, and together they return to Mexico. It's a hell of a scene.
That is a hell of a scene.
It's a lot of
Takes some
exposition there.
turns. Yep.
Did you buy any of that so far, or do we need to?
Did I buy any of it?
Yeah, I mean, what I liked about it was that it started as story. It started as our point of view onto what's happened, and then it transforms into Flaquita's telling of the story. And similarly with Gabrielle, it starts with that version, and then it turns into her telling the story. And I think that's a really neat point that they're trying to say is it's about telling stories. You know, it's soap operas just telling a story.
The narrative of this episode specifically is the story passed on from one person to another person to another person. And the legends, the tall tales, and the drama of it that is supposedly part of this culture. Whether or not that's accurate or not is not for me to decide.
Certainly in 1997, they're saying quite heavily that, that's part of this culture. So whatevs. We fade to Skinner's office because we haven't seen Mitch Pileggi in, one episode?
El Chupacabra?
Yes, sir.
Frankly, I'm confused by this story.
I don't blame you.
We can't exactly explain it ourselves, sir.
At any rate, we arrived just after the hazmat team. They established a perimeter, then secured the area. An eyewitness was found, but her testimony was questionable.
The hazmat team were able to contain the fungal infection within the migrant camp. No other casualties were reported, and we found no other traces of the accelerating enzyme.
Except on the body of Agent Lozano, we found him dead at the scene with a bullet wound to the chest.
And with the fungal infection already starting to eat away at him.
What happened to the brothers?
They were nowhere to be found. Lozano's revolver turned up 10 miles away, near the car of a man known locally as El Barbera.
Apparently, the brothers paid this man for a ride to Mexico, but they didn't get very far.
So these men are still at large, carrying a highly contagious fungus that can kill a man in his tracks?
It's not a fungus, sir, actually. It's an enzyme to which the brothers had an abnormal tolerance, and which came from what I believe to be an anti-enzyme gene.
And this enzyme came from where?
Outer space, sir.
So this is the story you're asking me to report. You would think with the resources we have, we'd be able to find these men. I'm not hearing a good explanation why this hasn't happened.
Well, sure, they have a way of being almost invisible.
The truth is, nobody cares.
It already just ticks this episode up, doesn't it?
It makes it watchable, yeah.
That face.
As our visual shows the pair of brothers, now in full fungus head makeup, being passed on the highway by a car which does not notice their strange condition. That's it, Mike. Yep. Give me them final thoughts.
Well, this is a strange one, Andrew. This is
a little
strange
bit.
one.
A little bit.
I can appreciate what they were trying to do here. I think the X-Files, and I've said it before, it was always on they weren't afraid to tell stories that highlighted things that needed to be talked about or needed to change in society.
Yep.
Did they always do it well? No, unfortunately they did. They tried, and that's commendable, especially for 1997.
Yep.
This episode, for me, it's enjoyable when you watch it the first couple times. I don't know that I typically go back to it. It has its moments, like we discussed.
Yep.
A little bit of levity, a little bit of goofiness. And the idea, the structure of the story is intriguing, but I just feel like at the end of the day, they kind of fall into making fun rather than actually bringing up an issue and sticking to it.
Mm-hmm.
So, this whole idea of, they're invisible, no one cares, it may be true. And it probably is true, unfortunately.
Mm.
They highlight that a couple times in the episode. Even the doctor lady, she's like, I don't want to deal with you. She's over there.
Yep.
She didn't care.
Yep.
So they highlight these things and they make note of it. But in the storytelling, I think it gets it makes it seem ridiculous, and that these people are just all about superstition and that there's nothing much more. So in trying to bring light to an actual issue, they kind of are making fun of it. So I don't know how to feel about it. It's a little weird for me.
I think you're also looking at it through a modern lens.
And that might be.
I think you would tell this story a little differently today. It's very much hammer and nails kind of stuff here. Like it really doesn't have a lot of nuance. The characters are stereotypical, but in a sense, they paint the brush pretty wide with the Mexican soap opera aesthetic. So they can lean heavily into that, saying, yeah, it's stereotypical because the characters are meant to be stereotypical. They're meant to be big, true, with a big storyline. So I think they kind of protect themselves with that, in a way that they probably didn't need to. Like, I think the audience for the show would look at this and go, oh yeah, migrants do have it tough. I've heard about that, but it's not like the episode goes to great pains to produce a solution or suggest that things could be better. They're just sort of saying, this is the background in which we're telling our story. And it doesn't get any better for these people. It's just, this is their lives. So I actually got to credit it for that, because it's not as high-handed as to say, and we know better, it's just saying this is how it is.
And that's the thing, is you're right in the sense that I may be looking at it from a modern lens. I'm not talking as if I'm offended, and no. It's nothing like that. It's just, I think there's a kind of like a treading water with this one that's at times feels a little off for me.
Well, I think that they go just about as far as they need to go in terms of making a point. They paint us a picture, they tell their story in this environment, but they don't harp on it. They don't have Lozano giving us a lecture about how hard they all have it. I think they have done that in other episodes. I'm thinking of Schizogeny or whatever, the child abuse episode, where they kind of went a little bit hard on that. And I think everybody who's watching the episode would be on board with saying, yeah, we shouldn't be bad to kids. But, that's what they had to do. In this case, though, I feel like they tread the line pretty well. They had a lot of story they wanted to tell us in that short time frame. So in a sense, they couldn't afford the time to make it a big issue thing. They needed to set the stage and then get to the business of telling us the story of the Chupacabra. And in that sense, I think they kind of succeeded in writing that balance. I think where it fell down, and actually before I get into this, I should say, are you done giving us your final thoughts, or did you have more you want to add?
Yeah, I think I'm good. You may as well, sir.
All right. So I think where it fell down is actually a discussion of what the monster actually was and how it worked. Because there's a few kind of missing pieces there. Like, how do the victims die? Like, I get that the explanation they tried to get to the end was the yellow rain was this space enzyme which accelerates the growth of all fungus. So they're basically saying it's not just a fungus. It's like, in this case, they had athlete's foot. And the enzyme just made it grow out of control. And so if you have this in you, it just gets out of control and ends up killing you because, if you got enough food in your system, you'll die. So I found that as a superpower is pretty interesting, but it doesn't explain things like Maria's burned away face or, that sort of happens in other people. But I guess maybe it doesn't need to. Maybe in life that happen when you have that level of fungal infection.
It very well could.
I don't necessarily need to know that, but I mean, all in all, this episode's a lot better than I remember it being. I remembered it as kind of like roll your eyes at what they're trying to do with the Chupacabra is the Chupacabra episode. But in a sense, it wasn't about the monster. It was about Eladio struggling with the fact that he's been cast in this role. He's the victim here. It creates a conceit and it sticks with it. So, I mean, I wasn't really groaning when we had what appeared to be a repeat of the plot point in Gender Bender, where the aliens pull a full Deus Ex Machina to bring their new baby alien back home. But happily, that's just a bait and switch. Flaquita's version of events. I like that. Yeah. But that gets me thinking, well, okay, now we've got to pull from the likes of Jose Chung's From Outer Space, where we have these competing narratives being told from different versions of the same story, except it comes in too late.
Right. It's just the one ending capper that kind of changes how things are.
The last 10 minutes of the show, we get these different points of view, which is an interesting idea. I just think it probably would have been way more effective if we almost replicate what we're going to see in Bad Blood, where it's the clearly different points of view of the same story and then the final resolution. I mean, I'm glad they saved it for Bad Blood because you can't say anything bad about that great episode. But I think it would have made a better episode here. The idea that there's his story, her story.
Different sides of the story.
Yeah, and the truth, which is somewhere in between, we'll never know. And we kind of get that from Jose Chung. Right. I think we could have done it here. Maybe they don't want to go back to the well on that too much. I could appreciate that. But I just felt like it was kind of weird that we sort of pull a left turn and have these competing narrative issues coming up at the very end. We have some great characterizations, the Grumpy Coroner, the Ventral Brothers, the C. Nadal INS guy. It sets out to tell a certain story, and it does that well. It could have been a much better episode with the comparing narrative stuff. Didn't need to be. I was quite happy with what I saw here, and better than I remembered it. So that's my final thought on the episode.
I think the episode is highly watchable. I think it's done structurally very well, and the storytelling I totally am on board for. I just think, there are some different issues for me in general, but as a story, I think Shiban wrote something that's cohesive and very, very to the point. So what do you say, sir?
I say it's time, if we have any, to look at some listener comments. Yeah, I mean, we got Sarah Lee saying, I'm a sucker for melodrama, so El Mundo is a fun watch for me. The ending is also so gutting and true.
And Katie Stenlake says, I agree with this. Once I learned it was supposed to be a parody of a Mexican soap opera, I appreciated it a little more. Still not one of the best, but also not an automatic skip for me. Exactly.
I agree with that sentiment.
It's middle of the road for me.
You know what? I think maybe another thing it could have benefited from was a a bit more risk on the point of view of the agents. Like, they're never actually, I don't think they ever really confront the chupacabra. They don't confront Eladio. Like, they have their foot chase moment. But
it's definitely a cat and mouse game. They are never with him to the point of a confrontation.
Maybe that's the point they're making, though, is that these folks are invisible. You're never going to catch them because you can't find them. I don't know.
I think that's part of it.
Well, I think we have covered the heck out of El Mundo Gira. Is there anything that we haven't said that needs to be said more about this episode? Oh, there is one more item that I think is interesting.
Uh-oh.
This episode aired the same day as the Simpsons episode The Springfield Files aired, with David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson doing celebrity voices.
Awesome.
Which I think we have to cover the Springfield Files at some point.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, with that out of the way, Mike, it's been a pleasure on this one. Thanks for joining us, lovely listeners. And Mike, I will give you the final word on our recording tonight.
Thank you for listening, ladies and gentlemen. It has been fun, a fun return after the shitty internet issues I had, which may or may not have been a result of someone interfering.
I'm sure we'll get to the bottom of that.
We will get to the bottom of that. Thank you again, and we will see you next time.
The agents find themselves, oh, I hate that turn of phrase. And you know I hate that turn of phrase.
That's fine.
Did you do that on purpose?
Yes, I did. I was wondering if you'd catch it. Okay.
Oh, I fucking caught it, all right. I'm going to throw it back in your face. I will even do it for you. You'll hear my schmarminess as I say it. Here we go. The agents find themselves in the middle of a soap opera as they investigate a tall tale of the chupacabra.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you liked what you heard, please rate and review on your podcast app of choice. Andrew and I would be eternally grateful to you fine people for helping us expand and get the word out. Also, we've got a killer group on Facebook. Feel free to join in on the discussion at facebook.com/groups/thisisnothappeningpod and become an official member of the syndicate. We do polls and we have questions for every episode to give you guys the opportunity to chime in and possibly let your voice be heard on our recordings. And please join us on our new Twitter at TINHXFilesPod, no dash, to stay up to date on everything, moment to moment. Thank you, and remember, don't stop swimming.